What's going on, everybody? Brenden Schaeffer back here with another fantasy football mock draft as we continue the march toward week 1 of the NFL season. This weekend, I'm sure lots of fantasy drafts going out. Next weekend, even more so. And then that first weekend of September, Labor Day weekend, is when most people will be wrapping up their draft season. So we're trying to get everybody prepared here. And this time, I'm going to go with a little bit of a different take on these videos. I've been drafting from positions in these mocks that I have objectively said I'm not looking forward to drafting if I pull those spots. But I thought, let's go on the other side of it here. Let's draft from the 1-1 and see if it's all that it's often cracked up to be. Do you want the 1-1 this year in fantasy football drafts? Let me know in the comment section below whether that's before this video and then you maybe watch it and do you feel differently after seeing the way it unfolds. Let me know your thoughts, fantasy community, on the 1-1 this season. I'm going to go half-point PPR. We're going to take out the second flex that we've been including in a lot of our videos. I prefer to play in deeper lineup leagues like that, but I know that a lot of people just have the kind of classic 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and 1 flex position in their league. So we're going to go with that. I think that's going to make it even easier from the 1-1 to get a lot of great value. What I love is, you get the best player in the draft, and then although you have to wait 24 picks to play again, you get to go twice in a row the rest of the way, which can be really nice. You don't have to really think about ADP when drafting from the 1-1. You just get to do it. So let's go ahead and kick this thing off. I am listening to your guys' feedback. Had somebody tell me, I don't like having to wait 2 minutes for this guy to make his draft picks. Okay, we'll make it 90 seconds, and we'll try to get these videos to be a little crisper for you so that you can consume the content and watch maybe more of them. If you like fantasy football content, subscribe to this channel. It's something that I have just begun building up, but already we're getting people on board and enjoying what we're doing here. Pretty simple for me in 2023. Justin Jefferson's on my team if I have the 1.1. I like to go wide receiver, especially if it's PPR. It's a no-brainer. But in the case of half point, I still feel that way. Less injury risk for wide receivers over running backs. McCaffrey, Eckler, great choices. But I'm looking at Jefferson, and right behind him is Chase. Chase could have a better year than Jefferson, but with the quarterback kind of concern, the Burrow injury, I think he'll be ready for week 1, but a little bit of uncertainty there has me landing on Justin Jefferson pretty much every time at the 1.1. That's not the interesting part of this mock draft. What will be interesting is what we do going forward from there. I'm going to pull up my roster so that you guys can see what it looks like as we go along here. Very interesting board right now as the top of this draft features 2 quarterbacks, Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. Patrick Mahomes going in the top of the second round. Mark Andrews sitting there. I oftentimes, if Mark Andrews is there in the early third, I'm taking him. So obviously with myself being the first pick of the third round in this draft, I have the opportunity to do so. I like the value of a Devontae Smith at the wide receiver position. I feel like there's a tier break maybe after Smith. Higgins, kind of a similar story because they're both wide receiver 2s on explosive offenses. I prefer Smith to Higgins narrowly. Again, I just want to make sure Burrow is good to go, and then I might feel a little better about Higgins. But T himself had some injury issues last year that I kind of have it shaken. Having him on some of those rosters and having him drop some goose eggs for me when we thought he'd play and he didn't, that hurts. Looking now at the running back spots, I believe there's some value here for sure. But I think I'm going to wait. I think I'm going to go with the stack of, well, it's not really a stack, but we'll go Devontae Smith. And then, like I said, I think Mark Andrews is a tremendous value if you're getting him in the early third round. He could put up Travis Kelce-like numbers. I'm very much in on the Baltimore passing offense being much improved. I think it's going to be more of a priority as well with the new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, there. Lamar Jackson, if he's healthy, he's got better pass catchers. That's only going to help the offense score more touchdowns and probably run more plays, right? If they're not running the ball as often, I think they can be a very dynamic passing offense. Mark Andrews could be the lead target in that group. I like guys like Zay Flowers maybe to step into a heavy role at wide receiver. But Mark Andrews has proven if he's healthy and Lamar is healthy, I think those two are going to have a fantastic year. We're not going to get a chance to stack Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews because Lamar goes off the board early 4th. Quite a run on quarterbacks there at the beginning of the 4th as we saw. A lot of running backs leaving the board in the 3rd round. But I look at some of those names like I'm not in on Najee, not really in on Mixon. Kenneth Walker, I think, is going a little higher than he should be considering what Zach Charbonnet is going to do to kind of split that backfield up. So we're not too broken up over the fact that a lot of running backs went off the board in the 3rd, but we do have to keep an eye on it eventually because, we don't have any running backs yet. But we can afford to put one more wide receiver in our roster, and I've actually messed this up. I intended to go 1 flex, so I lied to you guys off the top of the video. That's not what happened. So this is a 2 flex league still. I thought I changed that setting for sure. I'm not going to change it now because I think that would have changed the dynamic of what some of the CPUs would have done. But if you really want to see an example of a one flex situation from the 1-1, I can do another video. Just let me know below in the comments section. But that means we can be a little more aggressive even if we're looking at targeting wide receivers with some frequency. I don't love the names at the top of this board, though. Christian Watson, I think, could be compelling and attractive. We might go for him in one of these occasions. I'm also thinking about maybe taking my first Justin Herbert. I normally don't like going quarterback and tight end early in a draft, but I'm in on this Chargers offense. So we're going to go Justin Herbert because we don't want to fall victim to any more of those QB runs. Certainly by the time it gets back to us in the 6th round, we're not going to be ending up with anybody decent at quarterback. I'm not afraid to wait at the QB position if I need to at times, but in this instance, since I'm not loving the value at wide receiver running back, I think it makes sense to go ahead and nab an elite option at quarterback. I think Justin Herbert combined with Kellen Moore is going to be fantastic. And as a result of getting Herbert here, we're going to look for guys like Quentin Johnston a little later in the draft. I would like to be able to stack somewhere if I can, but I think we still have a little bit of time. Hopefully we don't draft him here, obviously, but the 6-7 turn might be even a little bit early to do it then, but he's somebody that we're going to keep in mind for sure. Taking a look at things, we do already have a Philadelphia Eagle, so that might take DeAndre Swift a little bit lower on our board just to try to mitigate some of our risk in terms of diving in on one offense, although that's an explosive offense to dive in on if you're so inclined. I'm really finding that I don't love drafting from the 1-1 right now if this is the way it shakes out. A lot of my targets in these rounds, I'm used to seeing them, at the 5-7 to 5-10 range. Now it feels almost like it's a little bit early to draft some of these guys, but you know what? I think it's a good lesson to be learned. ADP is definitely something you should use as a guide, but at the same time, you have to get your guys. Don't just draft somebody because they're higher up on the list. I like the explosiveness of Christian Watson, so I'm going to take him here as my first flex and my 3rd wide receiver. And I think I'm okay with it because you look at this, the 4 wide receivers come off the board right after us. Of those 5, Watson's the guy that I would prefer the most. Maybe Jerry Jeudy if you're really buying into the Sean Payton offense in Denver. But otherwise, I have no problem taking Watson where we did. Would have liked to have seen in that 6th round guys like Mike Williams, Brandon Ayuk, or Tyler Lockett come back to us, but we're okay with the way it shakes out because you know what? We really do have to start prioritizing the running back position. And it sets up favorably for us to do so. Javonte Williams definitely is a target of mine in the late 6th round. I've been seeing times where he's gone earlier in the mid-6, and I think he'll even continue to push up if his health status continues to look as strong as the reports suggest. So we'll take him without even thinking about it in the late 6th to get our first running back on the board. But with the risk that's associated with a guy coming off ACL, we shouldn't forego the running back position here in the 7th either. Let's try to just double check real quick who we might be missing out on at wide receiver if we do go RB. And maybe some of these guys will get back to us. But Smith and Jigba, very interesting. I think he'll be gone for sure. George Pickens, Jordan Addison, we like. Maybe even Jahan Dotson. And there's a guy, Quentin Johnston, that we're hoping will make it back to us. Curious what the sleeper line says on that. Oh, it's going to be close, boys and girls. Quentin Johnston right above the line, Gabe Davis right below it. We'd take Gabe Davis if he falls to us. Zach Charbonnet is another guy that we will be targeting. And if not, maybe we dump in on Zay Flowers and really go in on that Baltimore passing attack that we said we were intrigued by. Running back here is pretty simple. We're looking at just a couple of names. I think James Cook is the one that I've taken a lot recently. David Montgomery, though, is a guy that I am a fan of. Bigger on Jahmyr Gibbs, but I think he's going to get about a 50-50 workload split in that Detroit backfield. And I also feel like they could use both running backs on the field at the same time. And if I had to guess which guy is going to be a little more durable, it might be David Montgomery. I think he's not a huge guy, but he's got a little bit more experience between the tackles. Alabama just did not really use Jahmyr Gibbs between the tackles a ton, and he also didn't get a ton of snaps last year. His skill set is fantastic, and if it's full PPR, I'm thinking maybe a little bit more about a guy like Gibbs earlier on. But David Montgomery's not penalized as much if he doesn't catch as many passes, and I think he could be more of the kind of the bulk early down running back, if I had to guess, in that Detroit offense. So we're going to take him just to kind of mix it up a little bit. There's a couple of reasons that we did that instead of going with James Cook, who has been a fixture in my lineups when I'm drafting in the 7th round area and am in need of a running back. One of the reasons, though, is we were kind of hoping that Gabe Davis might fall to us, and then that way we can get a piece of the Detroit offense, which we're high on, and a piece of the Buffalo offense, which we like as well. And our hopes and dreams of Quentin Johnston falling, yeah, that wasn't even close. He goes 8.2. So I think that's a sign that when you look at these rookie wide receivers, they're kind of starting to rise up draft boards. If you thought maybe early on in the summer I was mock drafting and getting guys like Addison, Johnston, and Smith and Jigba in the 8th or 9th rounds, that may not be as possible when you get to your real drafts coming up. But guys that we still can get, Zay Flowers and Gabe Davis, two guys that I really like at this turn. Am I concerned about the fact that I've only got 2 running backs, though? Yeah, a little bit. Zach Charbonnet has been almost an auto draft for me in these rounds, and we're here at the back of the 8th. He's still available. And if you go down a little bit further, guys like Devon A-Chain, they're going to be gone before we draft again. And below that, the running back situation doesn't look very good, but you do have a guy like Sky Moore down below that we could potentially get. So we're going to have to take Charbonnet with one of these 2 picks just to shore up our running backs a little bit further. I get it that he's a rookie, and so that's an unproven option, but I'm telling you what, I think the difference in price between Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, where did he go? He went back at the 3rd round. I just think it's going to be closer to 50-50 than people necessarily believe at this point in time. For me, it should be more like Kenneth Walker in the 4th round, Charbonnet in the late 6th probably. Both guys are going to get a lot of work, though. Seattle wants to run the football. But because of where our roster is, we just felt like we had to get that kind of shored up at running back because by the time we pick again, I just don't think there's going to be all that much left. So are we going to be a little thin at RB? Potentially. But let's go ahead and take a look at what we want to do at wide receiver. I continue to find this as a question that I am having to face often in these mocks. Gabe Davis or Zay Flowers. You listen to Stephon Diggs, and he's like, oh, if I weren't here, Gabe Davis would be a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. Which is like, yeah, but Steph Diggs is going to take a lot of targets up in that Buffalo offense. But maybe this is kind of the post-hype sleeper opportunity for Gabe Davis. You were not getting him in the 9th round last year. And he didn't produce to expectations, but I think that could be the benefit where if you trusted the talent last year and it just didn't work out for him, maybe there's no reason to go back on that because the Buffalo did not really add pass catchers other than Dalton Kincaid. So I feel like Gabe Davis is a great pick here. I love Zay Flowers in the 9th in terms of value. I'm going to get Gabe Davis this time, though, just to make sure that I'm kind of covering all my bases. I've already got Mark Andrews from the Baltimore offense. Let's go ahead and make sure we get a piece of that Buffalo offense as well. Look at the offenses that we're invested in right now. It feels like a lot of offenses that we're excited by. Philadelphia, Baltimore, maybe not Green Bay, but Watson can be a difference maker. So we're okay with going into a bit of a lesser offense and dipping our toe into those waters for him. But otherwise, Seattle, we've got some pieces of that offense with Charbonnet. Obviously, Justin Jefferson is who he is, and Justin Herbert quarterbacking our team. So I didn't love the way this was setting up right around here at 5.1 with the Christian Watson pick because I just felt like that's a little bit of a reach on him. There is some risk associated if that offense just isn't any good. But I could certainly see myself wanting to start Gabe Davis over Christian Watson in various matchups. Starting Zach Charbonnet, though, might be a little bit risky off the top. So would I like this roster better if I only had one flex? I would. But I still feel like it's pretty solid. I've got upside at just about every position. And one key that I like to do in mock drafts, I haven't taken anybody that after the draft I'll go, I'm not in on that player, so I wish I hadn't taken him. Always take guys that you feel like you can be excited about. They're going to be on your team all year. Unless you trade them, you're going to have these guys. So if you want to not get into a position where you just immediately have buyer's remorse, don't click the button on anybody that you're not into. Have a list going into the draft of guys that you'll consider. You're not hearing me go, oh, I'm looking at these wide receivers. What about Bateman? What about Lazard, Thielen? I'm not talking about a lot of the guys. I am one-track mind onto my next target, which in this case, I think is going to be Sky Moore. We do get 2 picks in a row. I want pieces of good offenses, as I said, and Sky Moore off my bench could certainly turn into a guy that plays basically every snap for the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. So he's a guy that I just don't understand how he's going in the 10th round, the back of the 10th round. Have there been any other Kansas City Chief wide receivers going before him? Kadarius Toney goes up here in the 7th, but I think with the injury risk to him, I'd prefer Sky Moore straight up. So that's a guy that I'm really liking late in drafts. The upside on your bench is exactly what you should be looking for. So we're feeling pretty good about that. Nice part about this is we don't have to be thinking quarterback or tight end right now because we did early on go with the Herbert Andrews situation. So we feel good about being able to load up more at wide receiver or running back. And considering Sky Moore was our 6th wide receiver, or was he our 5th? Yeah, he's only our 5th wide receiver, but I think that's fine. I think you're in a good spot there to be able to scour the board for the best. At this point, I'm really looking for the best rookie running back that I can find this late because I feel like rookie running backs end up with the most upside in terms of being able to outperform their ADP. Kendre Miller, a little bit of an injury situation there. If he can be healthy week 1, he might be able to burst onto the scene in not Seattle, but for the Saints, I should say, while Alvin Kamara is suspended for 3 games. He's higher on the ADP board. He'll probably be gone before our next pick, but so too might Tank Bigsby. And I'm much higher on that offense in Jacksonville, and I think that's who we're going to take here because, again, we're just kind of mixing in and getting pieces of every explosive offense, and it's not like we've been forcing it. We're just seeing guys near the top of our board on ADP and saying, hey, this is a guy that he plays for an offense that we're high on. Let's go ahead and lock him in so that we can have at least shots that we're taking on all of the various offenses in the NFL that we think are going to be potentially explosive this year. Roschon Johnson going one pick before us kind of sucks. That would have been our pick for sure. Another rookie running back that, even though that's kind of a three-headed monster in Chicago, I feel like rookies are the guys that can emerge late when you get to the fantasy playoffs. And I count on being in the fantasy playoffs, so I draft for guys that are going to improve as the season goes along. Like if you compare Roschon Johnson to Deontay Foreman, it's easily Roschon Johnson for me. Is it going to be that way the first 6 weeks? Maybe not. But by the time you get into the fantasy playoffs, is Roschon Johnson somebody that can emerge? He definitely is. So that's kind of the way I'm looking for it. Who can kind of arise and become explosive in an offense that can be someone you think about putting in your lineup. Deontay Foreman, I don't think you're ever going to be tempted to put him in over anybody else that you've drafted higher as long as everybody stays healthy. And when you do put him in, it's like a bye-week filler that you don't feel great about. You're just taking your shot hoping he falls into the end zone. We don't really know what the usage is going to be there in Chicago, but if I had to pick it, Khalil Herbert, definitely the number one option for me in that offense, but Roschon Johnson, from a running back standpoint, number two. Trying to see where Khalil Herbert went. He went up here in the 8th round. That seems about right. I definitely like Roschon Johnson, though, a little closer. I probably should have been able to consider him. It's just when you're drafting twice in a row, when we went Sky Moore, Tank Bigsby, you don't get an opportunity to consider all the players that might go on the other end of the turn. So we just have to kind of live with it in this draft. I do have a tight end, but there is one rookie player that I'm really excited about at that position, and that's Sam Laporta. And because I know that these are my last two picks of the draft, I'm just going to go ahead and grab him and then take a look at my roster for how I feel about it. If Laporta doesn't really emerge as the starter in Detroit, so be it. We do already have the Montgomery share of the Detroit offense, but we'll know, I think, within the first couple of weeks if the offseason hype is real for Sam Laporta. And the nice part about that is tight end is a wasteland in most seasons, and we've got one of the best two tight ends already on our roster. It's going to be Andrews or Kelsey, and then everybody else, there's at least some level of question mark in my mind. So if Sam Laporta emerges as a legit option, he is absolute trade bait in terms of being able to upgrade our roster somewhere else. Like if he turns into a guy that people recognize, think about like a TJ Hawkinson was in Detroit. If he can take over that role and do it well and score fantasy points, we could probably by the middle of the season trade Sam Laporta and a Watson, a Davis, or a Sky Moore to upgrade to a legit wide receiver 1 or a mid wide receiver 2 that could suddenly be playing in our flex. That's the kinds of trades that we'll be looking for as time goes on. As far as this last pick, there's really not anybody that I'm over the moon about at any of these positions, so I'll probably just scroll around and take a rookie. I'm going to take Deuce Vaughn just because I want people to have him on the radar. I know it's kind of a niche pick, and we think he's going to maybe have a niche role in the offense, but I covered this guy in high school back in Austin, Texas, and Deuce Vaughn is, to me, Darren Sproles reincarnated. And he went to Kansas State, too. I'm excited about Deuce Vaughn and what he might be able to do in that Dallas offense. We're seeing reports. I think The Athletic reported that Cowboys running back Malik Davis might not even make the roster, which tells me, yes, Rico Dowdle, they're a little higher on him, but it tells me that Deuce Vaughn's probably going to get some snaps and have a role, and it's usually going to be like a scat back pass-catching kind of role for Deuce Vaughn out of the backfield, which means points in half PPR leagues. So we're going to take Deuce Vaughn there and feel pretty good about it. What do you think about this draft, though? That's going to wrap it up. Reading over our roster real quick before we get out of here. Justin Herbert at quarterback, I think that's one of the top 6 or 7 options. I consider the tier to stop with Trevor Lawrence, and I think Herbert is a little bit above him for me. So that's one of the better tier quarterbacks. Running back is going to obviously be a bit of a challenge if Javonte Williams isn't healthy. David Montgomery is going to be kind of a halftime role, but we just need 8 to 10 points from our running back position is honestly the way that I feel. When you load up on other spots like Justin Jefferson, Devontae Smith, and Mark Andrews, you can afford to just have guys who will get you a floor at running back. But I feel like there's also upside here for touchdowns between Javonte and David Montgomery, and we get a little bit of pass-catching action with Zach Charbonnet, and who knows what it could be for Tank Bigsby. If he's the number 2 in an explosive Jacksonville offense, ETN is not the kind of guy that's going to get 300 carries a season. So I really feel like Tank Bigsby could be one of those guys that gets you 8 to 9 to 10 points a week by the time it's getting to be around November, December when you're really starting to lock in for those playoff rosters. So we feel good about running back, even though we didn't prioritize it with a pick within the first, 5 rounds. Yeah, we took Javonte at 6-12. We feel pretty good about the group that we put together despite that. And then wide receiver, yeah, I mean, off your bench, I feel like we're looking at guys like Gabe Davis and Sky Moore. that are going to have upside to potentially enter your lineup or become trade fodder when you can package them in a 2-for-1. So I feel good about the way this unfolded from the 1.1. I don't know if it's my favorite position to draft from this year in fantasy. Let me know in the comments what you think about going from the 1-1, and if there's any other spots that you'd like to see me do mock drafts from on this channel, Brenden Schaeffer Fantasy Football. Going to continue to do them right up to the regular season, and then we'll kind of switch over to weekly content, getting you ready for Sundays throughout the NFL season. Make sure to hit subscribe to this channel, and catch us next time on the Brenden Schaeffer Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Peace.